Welcome back to the College Football Pick'em Pod, presented by Canes Insight. It's been a couple weeks, but we are back for the final week of the season. It was tough to get one in over Thanksgiving and the week before. I was really busy. I think Phil was too. You were what? You were in Atlantic City or something, or
that was last weekend.
That was last week. Okay, well we've been busy. We've still been watching the games. Still been putting money down. But before we get into everything, Phil, what do you got?
So we have great news this week out of Caneswear. The classic starter jackets you know and love are back. Brand new shipment is in and a whole bunch are in stock. Green, orange, white, black. The most popular seems to be green, just like last time. These won't last long. They're selling like hotcakes. So if you haven't already, get your starter jacket and all your Hurricanes gear at Caneswear on University Drive in the Arrowhead Shopping Center in Davie or at the online store at caneswear.com. Yeah, last week I was traveling for Thanksgiving, and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I was in Atlantic City, and they have their nice new sports books. And yeah, I didn't get to bet on college football because it wasn't on Wednesday night, unfortunately, but I bet on hockey and won every bet. So hey, moving on in life, huh? Moving on.
Well, there we go. Might have to switch over to a hockey.
I don't know, man.
Hockey.
I don't know if I can do that. That's a little stressful. That one, hockey is all over the place, but so is the college football landscape right now, Will. I know we haven't talked about it in 2 weeks. We had the horrific injury to Mackenzie Milton this weekend, which pretty much dooms UCF. But then when you start to look at these teams that are ahead of UCF and you look at the teams who are vying for a playoff spot right now, all of them have a legitimate chance to lose this week, and it's going to be really interesting. I'm almost of the belief where let's see what happens if Ohio State, Oklahoma, Georgia, and UCF all lose. Let's just see what happens. Or if UCF wins and all those.
I was going to say, give UCF a win. It's a real shame for Mackenzie Milton because it's like for a team like UCF to make the playoff, like a lot of stuff needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of things need to go wrong, and it's almost like we had the same four teams in the top four spots for since the first rankings were released, or pretty close to it. We've had Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and then I think Michigan. Were they in the first number 4 team? Maybe. But it's like if things could have gone the way UCF wanted them to go, they would have been. I think they would have been in. Like Ohio State, I don't even think Ohio State needs to lose. If it's a close game against Northwestern, I think you can't put Ohio State in. And then you have Oklahoma, they can easily lose to Texas, and then Georgia loses to Bama. I think if Mackenzie Milton were like healthy, they have to be in, and that'd be amazing to see Bama versus UCF. And I just feel that like since he's hurt, it gives the committee a very easy cop out. Like we're putting the 4 best teams in, and UCF is not a top 4 team without their quarterback, which is true, and you can't really deny it. So I don't think there's any way they get in now, and I think they probably lose to Memphis, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not completely sold on them losing to Memphis because if you look at what happened the rest of the game after Milton got hurt, UCF actually outscored USF, I believe, 21-7 the rest of the game after Mackenzie Milton got hurt. And I know you're not prepared for this guy, and the quarterback didn't do all that much. Sorry, I'm trying to find his name. I should have been more prepared. But I look at this as McCray, the running back. He ended up running for 3 touchdowns after Mackenzie Milton went out injured. So when I look at Greg McCray and this UCF team, he ran for 181 yards and 3 touchdowns against South Florida. South Florida had I think they were 1 game shy of the NCAA record for most games in a row with 35 points or something like that. Was it 35 or it was something crazy. It was on ESPN, and I just couldn't believe when that stat came up. And UCF's defense, which has been terrible all season long, stopped them, held them to 10 points. And I believe it was 34. I forget exactly how much it was, but there was some sort of streak they had going where it was most games either giving up 35 points or scoring a certain amount of points. I forget what it was, but either way, UCF held USF's offense. And the only way they're going to beat Memphis is if they can hold Memphis down. And I don't believe that UCF belongs in the playoff now, especially with Mackenzie Milton out. They're just not going to be one of the top 4 teams. But if they go undefeated and they beat Pittsburgh 45-14, and you're saying that Notre Dame is a guaranteed shoe-in for the number 3 seed, and Notre Dame only beat Pittsburgh 19-14. This is the same Pittsburgh team. There weren't any crazy injuries. I know that McKenzie Milton's gone, but if these other three teams, Oklahoma, if Georgia gets blown out, I don't want to watch Georgia play again. If Oklahoma loses, if Ohio State loses, if all of those teams lose, what do you do? Like, just what do? You have an undefeated group of 5 team, and I honestly hope that UCF doesn't make it now, because if UCF makes it, what we're going to be looking at is a situation where the committee says, oh, look, we put UCF in and they lost by 100 points to Alabama. This proves we shouldn't put UCF in. And they'll act like McKenzie Milton played the game because they're who they are. And I don't know, I want to use the word corrupt, but they're not corrupt. They're just mean. So go ahead, Will. Say something.
Yeah, it's actually, when looking at a lot of these championship games, I've thought a lot about motivation and scenarios. Like we'll get to the conference championship games. I was thinking for a little bit, like taking Bama against Georgia, that they'll cover 14 points. But it might be better for Bama to lose that game. Like that actually might be better for them. So it's like it's weird, and it might be best for the committee and their long-term goals and agenda to put UCF in without their starting quarterback, put them against this unreal Bama team, have them get blown out, and say, oh, we tried that and look what happened. So there's a lot of angles to look at this. I hope, just because what makes college football so fun is that there's no standings. There's no tiebreaker, at least for like the national conversation. Obviously the conferences have their tiebreakers, and it's objective. It's a subjective sport. It's almost like watching ice skating, and you have these judges, and I'm not an ice skating fan and everything, but it kind of separates it from a lot of other sports where there's a lot of discussion and talk, and that's why we like talking about it. So I'm all for Ohio State, not even needing to lose, just not playing well, beating Northwestern by a touchdown, Georgia losing, not necessarily even getting blown out. Oklahoma would, I think, need to lose in order to be bumped out and have UCF go ahead of them. But yeah, we'll get into it all.
And we're doing this podcast before the latest CFP ranking comes out.
Oh yeah, because they wait till Tuesday and have a big show and shove ads down your throat.
Exactly. So that's going to be tonight. We're doing this Tuesday morning. So we're not seeing what the new ranking is going to shape up and look like. But I'm really curious, because here's the deal. After UCF, okay, I'm still going to consider UCF as one of the top 7 teams who deserves a chance. After that, who can you go to? LSU lost a 7-overtime insane game to Texas A&M, so they're done. You can't put Michigan in because of how horrible they looked against Ohio State.
It was a bad loss.
They looked pitiful. I mean, they looked pathetic.
No, they can't go in.
So you can't put them in. Texas, you can't put in. I mean, there's no way you're going to tell me the Texas Longhorns are one of the top 4 teams.
Yeah, I mean, if they beat Oklahoma again with the Big 12 title, I know they have 3 losses. I mean,
Oklahoma State.
How can you put a 3-loss team above an undefeated team? Like that's tough.
And that's the shame of this McKenzie Milton injury right now, and that's why we've talked about it so much here right off the top. It's just a shame because this was their chance now. Alabama destroys Georgia this week. Let's say that happens, and we'll get into my picks on that one. But let's say Alabama destroys Georgia. No way the committee puts Georgia in because they don't want to see another blowout the next week. If Oklahoma loses to Texas, they're not going to put Oklahoma in because they lost twice, and they lost twice to Texas. Then if Ohio State loses to Northwestern, a team that the committee's not giving any respect, only has Northwestern at number 19. Northwestern's not really all that great. If Northwestern somehow pulls that off, what do? You can't tell me Michigan belongs in over UCF after the way they looked against Ohio State. You can't tell me Texas belongs in over UCF after what they did. Washington doesn't belong in over UCF, even if they beat Utah. It's a really crazy situation. It's a shame McKenzie Milton had to go out the way he did, especially with how graphic of an injury it was. Wasn't quite Alex Smith levels, but it was pretty gruesome. And it's a shame that something like that happens when, what are they? They've won 24 straight, looking for 25 against Memphis this week, a team who they've really owned. And I know that this year's game was close, but they've really owned this Memphis team over the last couple of years.
Yeah. I'm curious about that game. I'm leaning towards Memphis, but we'll get into it when we get there. Let's start getting into some bets. Overall, my last week we did on the podcast was not very good. And the week before I was 8-1, so I was riding a high. Then I put all this money in, so I'm at $210. So out of all this, we started with $200. I am up. I'm up $10. And Phil is coming off 2 very hot weeks. What do you have, Phil? How much?
I'm at $510. I went 8-2-1 in our previous week. I went 8-3 the week before that. 2 of my losses were actually 2 games I picked against Will, and Will won.
That's what I'm so curious. Why do you have so much money than me? I feel like anytime we go head to head, I come out on top.
Because you're making the wrong read on every other game. You know, I feel like you just want to prove me wrong, and then you're like, but it doesn't matter. Although we did have that UNC plus 10. You had Duke minus 10 when UNC played Duke. That was a while ago now. And Duke had an interception for a touchdown that got called back, and then UNC scored points, and they ended up losing by 7. They should have been down 21. So, fun stuff. But we have 10 conference championship games this weekend. This is probably like one of the most fun weekends. It's not, it's probably the most fun weekend in college football. It'd be a lot more fun if Miami was playing. Of course, Miami isn't. But we have we have 10 conference championships. We have a lot on the line. We just broke down how we didn't really even say what we think will happen in the college football playoff. We're just saying all of these scenarios that could come into play. And we have 2 games on Friday night, no games on Thursday this week. And the 2 games on Friday night I don't think are going to impact the college football playoff at all. Maybe Washington has an outside chance if every single other team ahead of them loses.
Say they don't.
But
I guess let's get into, before we get into all the games. Who are going to be the 4 teams? I think
Oklahoma will be 4.
Dude, I think it's going to be Ohio State.
I think Oklahoma is going to come out, and I think they're going to beat Texas this week, avenge their only loss of the season. And I think that I think Northwestern is going to play Ohio State very close. So you're already getting some of my predictions here. But I think that Northwestern is going to come out, play Ohio State very close. And I don't think the committee can look past, yes, they looked great against Michigan, but they looked so bad against Purdue. They looked so bad against Maryland just 1 week before. And Maryland lost by 35 to Penn State last week. And Ohio State needed overtime to beat them by 1. You can't look past how bad Ohio State has looked. You can't just say, 1 game, they deserve to be in. Yeah, they dominated Michigan. They scored 62.
Yeah, but they're still 11-1.
No, I agree with you. But I'm saying, let's say Northwestern comes out and loses this game by 3 points.
We got to compare to what's available. Like, yeah, 12-1 Ohio State.
Or 12-1 Oklahoma, who beats the only team they lost to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, I just don't think I don't think beating Texas is that big of a win, and it's probably going to be. I don't think Oklahoma can dominate that game.
They just won at West Virginia, though. They've beaten. Now they're gonna. If they beat Texas, that would be the second game. That would be the second time they play Texas. They will have avenged their only loss. So if you're going to tell me that a loss to Texas and then beating them is worse than a loss to Purdue by 29,
Yeah, but I just think Ohio State has better wins. Like, they have wins against Penn State, Michigan State, Michigan. Like, Oklahoma has wins against, like, the Big 12 just isn't that good. Like, yeah, West Virginia, that's a big win. Oklahoma State's having a down year. Texas is good, but you lost to them once. And I think, again, the fashion in which this Big 12 championship will play out, I don't see Oklahoma dominating the game. If they have a dominant win, then yeah, put Oklahoma in. But if Ohio State blows out Northwestern and Oklahoma beats Texas by a touchdown, I think
Ohio State gets in that situation. But what I'm seeing happening this week is I'm seeing Northwestern playing Ohio State very close. And
we have opposite reads.
People might call me insane for that. But I really do think. I mean, look, Ohio State beat Nebraska by 5. They lost to Purdue by 29. They beat Maryland by 1. Yeah, I know they beat Michigan State, but Michigan State's 7-5. Michigan State's not a good football team. So they only remember, we thought that TCU Ohio State game was going to be some great epic game, and it ended up meaning nothing. So yeah, Ohio
State still a good out of conference win.
Yeah, and look, I'm not like an Oklahoma homer here. I'm just looking at it as, does Oklahoma have a win like that on their resume? No, they absolutely don't. They played FAU, UCLA, and Army, and they're out of conference. That's terrible. But
almost lost to Army. Like, they had to go to overtime again with Army.
True. No, it's true. You know what? But this is why I'm saying
equal to the Maryland game.
Mackenzie Milton breaking his leg is
I know. I hear you.
It's disastrous.
All right, let's get into some picks.
Let's do the MAC championship and Pac-12 championship. Which, by the way, I'm looking at the AP poll, and the AP poll right now actually does have Washington ranked 10. And I know that the AP poll means absolutely nothing, but maybe Washington does have an outside chance to sneak in. I don't know. I'll just throw my hands up in the air and say,
I don't think they do.
I don't think so either. But either way, let's start actually with the MAC championship.
Look, if Texas beats Oklahoma, they're a 3-loss Texas team,
and they're better than Washington.
And you have a 3-loss Washington.
Yeah. Yeah, so, no, I feel that.
And beating Oklahoma is a much bigger deal than beating Utah. Beating Oklahoma twice, too.
Yeah. Well, but let's talk about the most important game, though, out of all these championships, and that's Buffalo versus Northern Illinois, Will. This has
I don't have any. I have nothing on this game.
You don't? Okay, so I have 20 on Buffalo -3.5.
That's what I was leaning, but
look, Buffalo's 10-2. Northern Illinois 7-5. Northern Illinois has lost their last 2 games. They lost to who did they lose to? They lost to Western Michigan and Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio is dreadful. I know Buffalo lost to Ohio badly back on November 14th, but if you look at what Buffalo has done all season long, they've beaten up on these teams. I mean, you know, even if you go all the way back to the out of conference, they beat Rutgers by 29, and Rutgers looks a lot better now, Will, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. But they beat Akron by 18. They beat Toledo by 14. They blew out Kent State. They blew out Bowling Green last week. I'm going to take the hot hand. I'm going to take the better team. 3.5 points isn't a lot. I like them to be able to win this game by more than a touchdown. Northern Illinois is still kind of riding high because they beat Toledo and they beat BYU. But then to lose your last 2 games to Miami, Ohio, and Western Michigan, 2 teams who aren't very good, I just think Buffalo runs away with this one. They get their championship. They're the best team in this conference by far. So I like that it's only 3.5 points. I thought this would be upwards of 7. So, yeah, I'll take this, and I'm putting 20 on it.
All right. Maybe I'll hop on that with you. Because I like Buffalo all season. They've been a team I've bet, and I didn't really look at this game too closely.
The reason that this is low, I believe, is because Northern Illinois is 10-0 in their last 10 against Buffalo. But they didn't play this season, so what difference does that make? You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And, yeah, did Northern Illinois, they had like a marquee win, didn't they?
Well, their 7-6 win over BYU makes them look really good. Because
their 7-6 win.
But it was after BYU had put up a bunch of points, and that's what made them look good. Plus, they played Florida State really good down at Doak, but that doesn't mean anything because Florida State ain't going to a bowl game this year. Mm-hmm. No, they are not. Party like it's 1981 because Florida State's going golfing. But, I just think that Northern Illinois, they're just not that good. They're just not that good of a football team.
All right, here, put me in for 15 with you.
All right, so we got Will coming in. Buffalo.
Which I usually am not allowed to do because it always curses the game and it ends up losing every time I've hopped on a bet with you.
But I've been hot these last couple of weeks, so we got to keep that going. All right, so then the next game is the one that we already hinted at and is obviously a much bigger game, the best game on Friday night. Utah playing against Washington, and Washington won this year 21-7. Washington was the favorite to win the Pac-12, was supposed to be going to the college football playoff. They're going to fall short of that in all likelihood, unless we said something insane happens. But it's one of those weird things where even after all of the mess, things always seem to somehow work out. And even though Washington had a really disappointing season, they're 9-3 with a chance to make up for all of that and just win the Pac-12 like they were supposed to at the beginning.
Yeah, and that's why I'd like them to win here. It's only -5. I've got $20 on Washington to cover. My main theme for this week is actually underdogs. I got a ton of underdogs, but this is one where I really like the favorite. Washington's just the better team.
I agree with you.
Utah has been kind of hyped as like this giant killer who's going to mess up a season. Well, guess what? Washington's season's already messed up. Mm-hmm. And Utah doesn't have much to play for. Like winning the Pac-12, that would be great. But you're only in here because the South is such a weak division. You haven't done much this season. That's why these conference championships are just crazy with the divisions. It's like you have Utah playing Washington. I get like who else would play in the Pac-12. But it is curious. And then you have like Northwestern versus Ohio State.
Pittsburgh versus Clemson.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Who else in the ACC would even go? So it's like it's weird. These games are so odd. I get the only big game, really. I mean, they're all big games, but the SEC championship and the Big 12 have kind of their best teams going in the championship. I think a championship should be the top two in the conference, not the winner of each division. But that's another story.
Yeah, so. I love this one. I think Washington runs away with this one. I think they beat Utah pretty bad. Look, Utah has won 3 straight games. They beat Washington. I'm sorry, that's Washington. They beat BYU. They beat Colorado really bad, and then they beat Oregon the week before that. But I still just think Washington's kind of hitting their stride. They knocked off Stanford after their loss to Cal, which was just ridiculous. They knocked off Stanford. They were able to beat Oregon State pretty good, and then they beat Washington State in Washington State in a really crazy snowball type game. And I think that they're just hitting their stride, and they're back to where they belong. I agree with you. Utah's in because the South stinks. And I think
they're 9-3 and like good for them, but the Pac-12 has been really down this year. I mean, USC was a joke of a team this year, and that they're kind of the leaders, or they're supposed to be kind of the leader of that division.
Arizona State might be the class of that division for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Utah lost Arizona State.
Yeah. By a lot.
It was, up and down season for the Pac-12. They're all over the place. But I mean, that Washington State game was awesome. And it's kind of like, I mean, Washington State was the team that had the playoff chance. They were they were 9-1 or 10-1.
10-1.
And it's like, man, they beat Washington. They go to the Pac-12 championship. They play Utah. They can win. They can go to a playoff spot because all this other stuff is happening. Michigan loses. Ohio State has lost. And then you kind of it just returns to normalcy a little bit, where like Washington has been the strongest team for probably the past 2 or 3 years, maybe not the strongest team. It's been kind of them and Stanford. I'm by a Stanford fan here, but it's been them battling, and it's like Washington State had this up and up year, and then Washington comes in and snatches the whole thing away.
Yep.
And that kind of happened that happened with Oklahoma and West Virginia. West Virginia, it's like, oh man, they now have an outside shot here. And then Oklahoma takes it away. Same thing with kind of Michigan and Ohio State, where Ohio State has been the dominant team of the Big Ten the past like 5 or 6 years. I don't think Michigan hasn't beat Ohio State since I think 2013 or 2012. I was actually at the game in Michigan. It was Denard Robinson. It was a fun game. But they haven't beaten them in like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And Michigan was in the top 4 looking good. And boom, Ohio State started his way. So it's kind of these teams that you thought were good at the beginning of the season, they kind of took care of business against these kind of up and coming teams.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's funny,
and I think that continues. That's going to continue here into the championship weekend.
I have another game like that we'll get to later on. But first, let's talk about these 3, what I would call absolutely pointless, ridiculous that they're even on the schedule games, and see if you have anything on them. So North Carolina State, East Carolina, Akron, South Carolina, Drake, Iowa State. Those are 3 games that are being played on championship weekend, Will. Those are 3 noon games on Saturday, December 1st, that'll be going on at the same time as at least 2 conference championships and a game that could get the Team Bowl eligible. Will, do you have anything on any of these games?
No, but wait, did you mention Marshall, Virginia Tech?
I did not, because Virginia Tech actually has something to play for.
Well, that's at noon also, and is not a championship game. I do have something on that, and I have the Sun Belt championship game also. That's an actual championship.
Yeah, and I actually am betting the Texas-Oklahoma game too. I got something on that. But I do want to say, before we hit those, the only one that I'm betting on is North Carolina State. They're 24-point favorites against East Carolina, and I know that's a huge number. I know that's a scary number. I know North Carolina State had to go to overtime against North Carolina last week, but they beat Louisville 52-10, and I look at East Carolina as a very similar team to Louisville, and East Carolina lost 56-6 to Cincinnati, and I look at North Carolina State as very similar to Cincinnati. So I like that this is just 24 points. I don't understand why this game is on the schedule. East Carolina has no chance of becoming bowl eligible. North Carolina State has nothing to play for except for 9 wins and then the possibility of a 10-win season if they win their bowl. North Carolina State is super overrated. If the ACC wasn't so bad this year, they would be like the 9th or 10th best team in the ACC, but the ACC is just dreadful. So the 8 wins, I'm assuming 9 is kind of a it's not all that great. But
this was probably a rescheduled game due to the hurricane where it was like NC State's going to need this to become bowl eligible, and now they're sitting at 8-3. They don't need this game, but they've already, sold tickets. It's on the broadcast schedule, and it's happening.
Yeah, it's one of those games neither team has anything to play for, but I just like North Carolina State to come out. It's their last game at home and just blow this team out of the water and get out of there, go to a bowl game. Because the other thing is, too, if you lose a game like this, it might actually affect where you get placed in a bowl, couldn't it? It definitely could.
Oh, yeah.
So they got to win this one, and they got to win this one by a lot. I'm not touching South Carolina, Akron, or Iowa State. Drake, but all right, Will. So I have North Carolina State -24. I got 15 on that. Let's talk Marshall, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech scheduled this game because they needed to. They knew they would need to win it in order to become bowl eligible. Little did they know that they would actually beat Virginia last week, so that this game would have meaning. Virginia Tech sitting at 5 wins. What do you like here?
I like Marshall. I'm taking Marshall plus 4.5. I think Virginia Tech can win this game, but I think there's probably a lot of thought that Virginia Tech is playing for something. This bowl game, they're at 5 wins. This is why this game is on the schedule. And so that they're going to play their hardest and win, maybe. But even if they play their hardest, I don't think they're that good. They're a pretty bad team. Like, Virginia Tech is really bad.
They're bad.
And if I'm Marshall and my season's over and like whatever, we had an okay year and this, I was supposed to, go on a little break here, a little vacation, and I now got to go to Virginia in December so that they can be bowl eligible when we're already 8-3. We already have our bowl. Like, I would be a little ticked off. So I'm hoping Marshall comes in there and they're not just going to roll over and let Virginia Tech go to a bowl. They're going to go in and say, hey, you're like, I don't know. I would be kind of offended if I was a team that just got scheduled so that they can get their bowl.
Well, and that's what's so funny about this game is that Marshall is the better football team, I believe. I'm taking the under because Virginia Tech has so much more to play for. It's at 53. I'm taking the under on that. I have 20 on that. I'm pretty confident in this under. Virginia Tech, yeah, I know last week's game was 34-31 against Virginia, but if you look at Marshall, they play pretty good defense, and Virginia Tech's offense isn't very good. So what I'm expecting from this type of game is maybe 10-7 at half, 14-10 at half, something around those numbers. And then the second half, one team to pull away and the other one to score maybe 3 points. That's really all I'm expecting. And look, this last weekend as a Canes fan, to sit there and watch Miami destroy Pittsburgh, who's getting to go play Clemson, to watch Duke get absolutely obliterated, to watch Virginia Tech beat Virginia after we demolished Virginia Tech, and then to watch Georgia Tech not be able to run the ball for more than like 15 yards against Georgia. Those are the 4 teams we lost to. I don't even mind the Boston College one. But to lose all of those other games, that has to sting for every other Canes fan as well as myself, knowing that that should be us playing Clemson this week for the right to get blown out.
Yeah, it should be.
It should. It's brutal. But I have the under.
Terrible year. Terrible season for Miami.
It's terrible, dude. It's so
as bad as it's been in the past, 7 years.
It's brutal because the expectations are so high. And the crazy thing is, they're probably still.
But that's even. No, but even I thought, it was because the expectations are high. Yeah, and then you lose to Virginia, and you slip up, lose at BC, but then you start just dropping.
Duke is an excuse.
You lose to Duke, you lose to Georgia Tech, you lose to Virginia. That's not, expectations were high. That is bad no matter what your expectations were. That's terrible. That's back to Ja'Cory Harris days. Ja'Cory Harris days were better.
The crazy thing is Miami is probably the 4th best team in the ACC right now. They're better than Pittsburgh, probably. I mean, we just watched them demolish Pittsburgh, and I know Miami had a lot to play for, and Pitt had nothing to play for. But then you look at the others. Syracuse is better, Boston College is better, and Clemson is better. You can't tell me there's another team there. Maybe Georgia Tech, maybe. But really, that's it. That's the only argument you can make. The rest of the teams are dreadful. Virginia is falling apart at the seams. They're going to get destroyed in their bowl game. They're going back to what they were supposed to be at the beginning of the year. They have no offense. So, yeah, that's a little side note for this Virginia Tech Marshall game, but I agree with you.
So I got Marshall. I mean, I think they're about the same level. So to get 4.5 points, especially when I think they're going to be a little like, hey, you don't just get to go to a bowl game because he scheduled us. So,
you want to talk Sun Belt or you want to talk Big 12 first?
Let's do Sun Belt. Let's get the Sun Belt out of the way.
Out of the way? How could you disregard them like that?
Well, I just, they're G5, man. G5 is so much inferior.
I know.
So, it's Louisiana Lafayette at Appalachian State, and I'm taking Louisiana Lafayette plus 18. It's just too many points here, especially App State can get the 17-point win, and you cover, so I love that. It's just that Appalachian State, I think, has been kind of this hot team. They had that insane game against Penn State at the beginning of the year. They, I think, have been ranked a couple times. I don't know if they were ever in the college football playoff poll, but they were in the AP poll for sure. They've been kind of a buzzy team, and I just don't think they're as good. I think they're a little overrated, and I think Louisiana Lafayette is underrated. I think they're a better team, and they only lost by Appalachian State by 10 points in the regular season. So for this to be an 18-point spread for a championship, when you expect the teams to kind of put their best foot forward, maybe have it be a little bit more defensive and be closer, for this to be 18, I think is a lot. So I got $15 on it. And I don't think I mentioned I have $10 on the Marshall plus 4.5. I don't feel super confident, but I really do want to just bet against Virginia. I want to have that one.
Yeah, I have Louisiana Lafayette at plus 18 as well. I have 20 on it because, look, Appalachian State isn't that great. I know they're a huge favorite. This is the first Sun Belt title game ever. They're 18-point favorites. They're the better team. They're 9-2, while Louisiana Lafayette's 7-5. I fully expect Appalachian State to win this game. But every time that Louisiana Lafayette has lost this year, they've put points up. And I know that means a loss to Alabama. They put up 14, but that's 14 against Alabama. Good for you. They lost to Appalachian State 27-17. They lost to Troy 26-16. I think that they keep this close, and I think they can keep within 2 scores. So even if they lose 34-17, we win. And I love that. I really do. I think that is great.
34-17, that's 3 scores.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, even if the score is 34-17, we win. So I love Louisiana Lafayette as an 18-point dog here. I think that this is a really, really good bet. And I do think that Appalachian State, that will ultimately come out on top of this game as your first ever Sun Bowl championship game winners.
There you go.
There you go.
Both in agreement here.
Now let's go to the Big 12. The game that has a lot of meaning for the college football playoff. If Oklahoma wins, and they win by a lot, I think they're in. The over-under of this one is at 78, and I'm not touching it. I'm terrified. I wanted to take the under, and then I looked at what these two teams did when they played each other the first time, and I'm not going to touch it. Oklahoma's defense is atrocious. It's so bad. They have no defense. But the thing is, I do think they win the game, but they're going to win it by like 3-7. Right now, this is at 7.5. Give me the Longhorns.
Sign me up. $20 on Texas.
So do I, man.
It's just these Big 12 games, we see it happen all the time where the games are a one-score game. It's like whoever has the ball last scores.
Yep.
I mean, that West Virginia-Oklahoma game, like, yeah, okay, Oklahoma big win against West Virginia, but that was never like it's not like you had that in the bag the whole time, and West Virginia came back and made it super close. Like, West Virginia was pretty much there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that final? I mean, it was absurd. It was like 52-49? 59-56.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a one possession game, and it was the same thing when they played Texas the first time. It was 48-45. Yeah. 3-point game. So and even if it gets to a 7-point game, you're still good with the hook. So I love the 7.5. I'm hopping on this over too for $20. Over under set 78. I initially was like, let's look into the under, because the under in championship games is kind of I think it's the smarter play. But you just look at Oklahoma. Here's the past 8 games. The lowest they've put up is 45. And that was against Texas. They've only scored in the 40s twice during that time. Every other time was in the 50s or 60s. And the game's going to be within a touchdown. At least that's what I'm thinking. So if Oklahoma puts up 45 points, and let's say they win by a touchdown, that's 45-38, which still covers. So I feel really good. I didn't feel I like you. I wanted to look to take the under just because 78 is so high, but then you just look, Oklahoma pretty much puts up 50 points every game. And if Texas is going to be within a touchdown of Oklahoma, then that puts it over. So I got 20 on Texas to cover and 20 on the over. I would hate for this game to go wrong, but it easily could.
Yeah, and I was going to do the under, and then I looked at the over, and it just seems like it's going to be an over, but that's so many points. I'd rather live bet that one, to be honest with you. Maybe it starts off as a 7-0 game with 5 minutes left in the first quarter, and all of a sudden you can get that number down into the 60s, and then you take that. Then you jump. But at 78, that's just a lot of points for me to take the over.
Yeah, I hear you. I know Oklahoma's going to put up at least 40. And then Texas can win this game too. I don't think we have to rule out that Texas can win by a touchdown.
Yeah.
So,
all right, man. The next biggest game of the week, the Conference USA Championship, UAB versus Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is a 1-point favorite, 1.5-point favorite right now. They just whooped UAB. They just demolished them. They beat them 27-3 last week, but both teams already knew that they were going to be playing in this game, so I'm not going to put too much weight on that. Both teams are bowl eligible. Would you rather win the regular season game or would you rather win the conference championship? Now, I don't necessarily know if UAB is going to win. They do have the better record. They kind of have the better resume. They look, other than obviously getting blown out by the team.
UAB was ranked, right?
They got votes. I don't know if they ever actually got in, but they were close. I mean, they beat North Texas 29-21. They were the first team to beat North Texas. And they've lost 2 straight. But like I said, this game against Middle Tennessee, I'm not putting too much emphasis on because both teams already knew they were going to be here. I like the over in this game. I'm not going to take the spread because it's too close. I don't know enough about either team to do that. But the final of the last game was 27-3. The over-under set at 45. And I don't think UAB played last week. If you look at the amount of points they put up in other games, they scored 20 against Texas A&M, 26 against Southern Miss, 52 against Texas San Antonio, 29 against North Texas. And Middle Tennessee scores as well. Put up 23 against Kentucky, 48 against UTEP, 29 against Western Kentucky, 51 against ODU. I like this game going over. I think that this number came down because of what we just saw last week. But I think that because it's the championship game, you see something around 35-30, 35-28, somewhere in there where you're almost hitting 60. And to have it only at 45, I like that.
Okay, I'll hop on that with you. That makes sense. I didn't look much into this game, so I like it.
I have 15 on it. What do you want to put on it?
I'll go 15.
There you go. All right. So next one up, we have. Oh, well, maybe you can explain this one to us because I'm not going to we don't need to talk Liberty Norfolk State, do we? You don't have anything on that one, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have anything on Liberty Norfolk State. Liberty's trying to become bowl eligible, but maybe now it's your time to shine. We got Stanford Cal. Explain me what's going on. Why is this game happening?
So this game, big game is what it's called. I think Cal fans might call it the big game, but at least amongst Stanford fans and what I've noted as, it's just big game. So this is big game, rivalry game. And they got canceled because of the smoke in Northern California. So they were unable to play it. My parents were actually having a big game party and the game got postponed. I think they still had the party anyway and just watched some other games. And yeah, you got to play it. This is, it's Florida State, Miami for these schools. So you got to reschedule it. So it comes here on December 1st, championship Saturday. And I actually really like the over in this game. It's set at 48.5. And this is mainly because Cal has a pretty stingy defense and the way their games play tend to be really low scoring. Like, what was that win against Washington? It was like
12-10.
12-10. Yeah. You get a lot of weird scores with Cal and their defense. But Stanford's defense is bad. And Stanford's offense is pretty good. So I think Stanford makes up for it by putting up points against Cal. I think they won't get like held to 10 points. I think Stanford will be in the 20s at least. And then Stanford's defense is pretty bad. So Stanford gave up 42 points to UCLA this week, and I watched that game. It was Stanford won 49-42. So, and then Stanford put up 48 points the week before against Oregon State. So I think Stanford can score, and then Cal, I think, can score on Stanford. So I like this over 48.5. I got $15 on it.
You got 15 on it. All right. I like Stanford here at -2.5. I know that it's in Cal, and I know that it's a big game. I didn't realize it was the big game, but I know that it's a big game.
No, it's not the big game. It's just big game.
But if you look at Stanford, yeah, they've horribly underachieved this year. 7-4, lost to Utah. They lost to Notre Dame badly. But they only lost to Washington State by 3 and lost to Washington by 4. And I think that yes, it's in Cal, but I think that they go there, and I think because it's a rivalry game, this is kind of a way to redeem your season a little bit. You saw how well, Florida State played against Miami this year when that game happened. And I think that Cal, they beat USC 15-14, but they were losing 14-0 in that game, and USC just forgot that there was a second half like they've done all season. They got Colorado by 12. They played Washington State pretty good. They beat Washington. But I think Stanford ultimately pulls this one out. I think because they have the better offense, that's why they win it, because I think it's going to be a defensive struggle game. But if you have a team that I think is the better team by less than a field goal, I like them to at least win by a field goal. Even if it's a last-second field goal, I like Stanford to win this game by at least a field goal. So I actually have $20 on Stanford -2.5.
Wow. All right. Yeah, I could see that. I think Stanford's going to score here, and I think Cal's going to score here too. So I feel good about this over.
Yeah. All right. Now to the American Athletic Conference Championship. UCF versus Memphis. It was probably the most exhilarating game of UCF season so far. They almost lost to Memphis. Memphis had them beat, and then Mackenzie Milton led the team all the way back. Mackenzie Milton's not playing this week. It's Darryl Mack, I believe his name is. And look, Memphis has lost 11 straight now, I think it is, to UCF. UCF has just owned them. Memphis beat Houston real bad last week. UCF, man, I don't think they're done playing just yet. They beat USF 38-10. The defense is coming around. They only gave up 13 to Cincinnati. And I know they had a couple sketchy weeks in there. They gave up 40 to Temple and 24 to Navy, who is horrible at offense. But I think that UCF's defense locks down, and I think that this team comes out and proves that they are more than just Mackenzie Milton. Not much more, but I think they proved that they are more than Mackenzie Milton. And I think that they beat Memphis again, and I like them to cover the 3. I really do. I've been saying it all season with UCF. I think I've only gotten burned by them once all year. Other than that
Memphis game,
right? It was the Memphis game, but this spread is a lot lower, and I like UCF to pull it out to win the AAC championship again and to make the committee sweat because they have to decide, okay, this is a team that just looked better against Memphis than they did the first time without their starting quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Memphis is a really good team, and UCF barely beats Memphis like with Mackenzie Milton, and now they don't have him. I mean, they won by 1 point. They won by the smallest margin possible to get a victory. And now you don't have your guy. I mean, I guess I see that UCF is going to, everyone's going to play their darndest to make up for Milton's absence. Definitely see that. But I think this is important to Memphis. So I wanted to lean Memphis, but I'm not going to do it just because I'm going to root for UCF. I want to see them win. I want to see them in the conversation, at least for the national playoff picture. But I'm not going to bet any side of this game because okay. I can see especially if Memphis scores early, I can see those UCF kids being a little bit discouraged and feeling like, damn, well, we don't have our quarterback. We can't win. So right. I worry about that. But I do see the other side where it's they're going to have
Greg
to do
McCray.
everything. What's up?
Greg McCray. I mean, he's the running back for UCF. I think he's going to have a great day. I just think he's going to have a great day. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than many people think because now you don't have Mackenzie Milton. But I still think that UCF pulls it out. Their defense has been so much better of late. So much better. And the run game is there.
What's the over-under set at?
64.5. I still don't like that.
Well, the under would have cashed for their first matchup with Mackenzie Milton.
That's true. But that also would require Memphis to not score the entire fourth quarter or whatever it was like they did in that game. I don't want to touch it.
Yeah, no, I don't like it either.
In case this gets lopsided too. But I'm going to go with UCF -3.
All right, I'll be rooting for him. I got no action on this though.
All right, man. Now we're almost at the biggest ones. We have 4 games left. We have Georgia and Alabama SEC championship. This game is going to determine whether or not Georgia makes it in. If Georgia plays Alabama close, they probably still get in. I really do believe that. You don't think so? I really think if they lose to Alabama by 3 points, a last-second field goal or something like that, I think Georgia gets in. I really do because Alabama's been blowing everybody out all year.
But so you're talking about a 2-loss Georgia would have to get in over. Is this assuming Ohio State and Oklahoma both lose, or are you going to put a 2-loss Georgia in over a 1-loss Big Ten champion or a 1-loss Big 12 champion? Because that doesn't seem right to me. I almost feel like if you're going to have 2 losses, then you need to win your conference. If you have 2 losses,
like Alabama last year.
What?
They
didn't win their conference.
I know.
But they only had 1 loss.
Oh, they only had 1 loss. That's right. It was only to Auburn.
Yeah. So if you're going to get in with 2 losses, I think you got to win your conference, especially if you have 2 losses and there are 2 conference champions that only have 1 loss. You just can't make the argument. And even if you want to say, okay, Georgia loses to Alabama by 3, and they're probably the top 4 in the country. And I've kind of been this way since the BCS days. I always say, let's see some new teams play each other so we can get a better gauge on everything. Seeing Alabama play Georgia and then seeing them play immediately again in January or December, late December, when Alabama's number 1 and Georgia's number 4, and Alabama wins by 3 again. I mean, I would rather see UCF play and see what happens. They might get blown out, or I'd rather see Oklahoma play or Ohio State just to see a team that hasn't already played. And that's why when it was LSU, Alabama in 2011, and they just played played for the SEC championship. It was a shitty game. It's a 3-point game. And then they played again, the national championship, and it was a shitty 3-point game. And it was we didn't learn anything new. It wasn't fun to watch. So I get the argument, but I personally would not. I mean, a 2-loss non-conference champ getting in, I don't see happening.
Let me put it to you this way then. Let's see how you feel here. Alabama beats Georgia by 3. Oklahoma loses, and Ohio State wins by 3 as well over Northwestern. Who gets in?
And what does UCF do?
UCF wins. UCF wins.
How badly?
Honestly, I think at this point they just win. I don't even know. Let's say they win by 7.
Okay.
They don't win by a lot.
Honestly, I say give me UCF. I don't need to see Georgia, Alabama again. And this isn't, again, this is why it's subjective. There's no right way to do it. And if Georgia were to get in, I wouldn't be like, this is a scam. This is all about money and there's an agenda. I would just be like, no, that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Personally, I would like to see more teams play each other, get new information. To see Alabama and Georgia play twice in the same month doesn't do anything for me. So,
and to be honest with you, Will, I got Alabama minus 13.5. I got 20 on it. I think they blow Georgia out of the water. I don't think it matters anyway. I think they kill them.
See, I was leaning that way also. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking, man, Alabama losing this game is probably, you could argue that it's good for them.
Yeah.
This is what happens. This is what happens if they lose. If they lose this game, they're still in the playoff. They'll go to number 4, maybe even number. I mean, what would happen in that situation?
Well,
Was
that's the
Clemson
thing.
go to number 1?
The committee's hands to lose to Georgia and then have Ohio State and Oklahoma both win, and now you're the one-loss team that doesn't have a conference championship, while the other 4 teams all have a conference championship.
Yeah, but it's Bama. They're going
still
to be
Bama, but I don't know, man. You never play
12-0.
a football game.
I know, but and then Nick Saban will get his guys like totally motivated.
But it's an SEC title too, man.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'm just thinking, like, yeah, you want the SEC title. That's almost just as big to these teams. All right, I'll hop on that one as well because I was leaning Alabama until and I'm seeing it -13.
I just saw it -13.5. That's my bad.
So give me that for 15.
All right. All right, now on to what has to be the worst conference championship in the history of Power 5 conference championships ever. And maybe this will turn out to be a surprisingly good game. But after what I just saw last week, and I get Pittsburgh had nothing to play for. They had nothing to play for, nothing. But this game is going to be awful. And I know Pittsburgh played Notre Dame well earlier in the season, but I don't see Pitt being able to run the ball against Clemson, and I don't see Pitt being able to stop Travis Etienne from running it down their throats. I actually I'm doubling up on this one. I got Clemson -26.5. I got 15 on that. I have the over of 53. I got 20 on that. I think that Clemson ends up winning this one, somewhere around like 45-14 or somewhere up there. Could be even higher than that. But
I was thinking about doing the over, but remember the score of last year's championship game. That was a 10 and what was it? That was a 10-1 Miami team.
Yeah.
Who was like a top 10 team in the country, supposedly. Yeah. And it was 38-3. And then you have Pitt, who's now nowhere near that Miami team last year, even though they beat that Miami team last year.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of this game because I also this is one of those things where I think Clemson doesn't have much to play for besides obviously the ACC title. Do they have any incentive to blow Pittsburgh out and win by 26 points? I don't think they do. I think they can win by 10 points. They can win by 14 points, wrap up the ACC title that they know they're going to win anyway, rest some people, make sure there's no injuries. And I mean, they're focused on the playoff because this is another team they could lose and probably still get in.
Yeah, but the way Pitt looked last week and the fact that Pitt is 7-5, I don't know if Clemson can lose this game. If they look bad doing it,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I don't think they're going to lose, or even if they did lose, they would 100% get in. But this is a Clemson team that they're pretty much squared away. Like they're set.
Well, I will say this. I think Pitt will come in this game a little fired up. I think they get a touchdown. Look, against Penn State, Pitt came out and scored right away and then couldn't score the rest of the game. But they came out and scored right away, and they played Penn State tough before blowing it. They played Notre Dame tough before blowing it. They played UCF tough before blowing it. I think they come out. I think they get a touchdown early. I think it puts Clemson on their heels a little bit, and then I think Clemson blows them out of the water. And look, if it does end up being 38-7 or 38-3 like last year's game, I win the spread and I lose the other one. But I think that this game's going to go over. I think Pittsburgh might – I know Pittsburgh's offense looked terrible against Miami, but I think Pittsburgh can get 14 points against this Clemson defense. And we've seen it happen before where Clemson is dominating this season. They're dominating. And at the end of the game, they just give up a touchdown here and a touchdown there. And it's like, whatever, we don't care. And I can see that happening.
I don't know. I like the under here more than the over. I don't see the over because I could see Pitt putting up 10 or 14 and Clemson putting up like 30.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That's fair. What do you do? You got anything on this?
35-14. You know, then you're sitting at 49 points. I don't have anything on this game.
Okay.
I don't. It's too much of a it's just too confusing. Like a 26.5 point spread. It's huge. Clemson is 1-5 against the spread if they're a favorite of 21 or more this season.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they've killed teams, like they usually beat teams by like 30 when they're like a 14 point favorite.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Mountain West
Staying
Conference
away.
Championship. You want to go to Mountain West Conference?
Yeah, I don't have anything on this game, but sure. Fresno State, Boise State.
Yeah, I have Boise State minus 2.5. It's really hard to beat a team twice. Boise beat Fresno earlier in the year, but I just think Boise's the better team. I think that they beat Fresno. They were supposed to, Boise State was supposed to be in the conversation like UCF is right now, and they should be cheering because McKenzie Milton gets hurt. And it's like, oh, great, now we're going to get into the New Year's Six Bowl. Where they ended up losing a couple earlier in the season. They dropped an ugly one to San Diego State. But they've righted the ship since then, and I think they come out. It's only 2.5. I like them to win by at least a field goal here, so we can jump past that one. But I like that one. I have 20 on it. And then we get to the Northwestern Ohio State game, Will. This is right now a 14.5-point spread.
I saw it at 14.
14. I guess I'm looking at the wrong thing here. I'm pulling it up.
That's big.
When I click the link, it comes up. Yeah, now it's 14. All right, it's 14. The over-under's at 60.5. How are you feeling about this game?
I feel, and how I felt for a while, even after the Purdue loss, that somehow Ohio State is going to find their way into the college football playoff. That's just how I've felt. And I don't even really know why, other than that, like, they always wiggle their way in. And this year, the same thing. It's like it's set up perfectly for them to get that number 4 spot. Alabama beats Georgia. Oklahoma loses to Texas. And they need to stomp Northwestern. They need a dominating win, and they're still alive. Then you're 12-1 Big Ten champion, who's Big Ten is widely considered the second best conference behind the SEC. I don't know how you leave out the champion of that conference when they only have one loss.
Agreed.
And Ohio State is a team that plays defensively much better against teams like Michigan and teams like Northwestern, who play at a slower pace, who run the ball, are more about kind of that physical stuffing the box up front, that whole mentality. That's where Ohio State, they can air out passes. They can their linebackers play a lot better. And then they play against teams like Purdue, who like have these spread offenses and these kind of weird schemes, and they're throwing the ball all over the place. That's where Ohio State gets lost, and their defense kind of sucks, and they get scored on a ton. Northwestern doesn't play like that. So I see Ohio State being able to really handle this game, and they need to win by like 3 touchdowns to be considered. I think if Ohio State wins by even 14 points, it's not dominant enough. So that's why I'm taking Ohio State minus 14, because they are in this thing. They are in the conference. As much as you may not want them to be, like, I don't like Ohio State. I hate Ohio State, actually. And you can say they lost to Purdue badly lost to Purdue. You can say they look terrible against Maryland the second to the last week of the regular season. You can say all that. But if they are 12-1 Big Ten champ, and they're, and there's no Big 12 champ that has one loss, you're not getting anyone from the Pac-12. You're only getting Clemson from the ACC. I mean, there's not much else to where are you going to go? How are you going to not let these how are you not going to put them in? It wouldn't make sense. So they're in it. They are fully alive in the college football playoff. They are a contender for the national championship game. And I'm sitting here saying that the players, they know it too. Mm-hmm. They probably believe it even more so than I do. So they go to a neutral site, take care of business, and they might find themselves in. So that's why I like Ohio State to cover.
It wouldn't have been fair if we didn't have one game where we disagreed. How much do you have on that?
$20.
Yeah, I have 20 on Northwestern the other way. So here's the reason why I have 20 on Northwestern. And I think Ohio State wins this game. I do think Ohio State eventually finds themselves in the playoff as the number 4 team in the country, plays Alabama in the first game in the semifinal. Watch them end up winning. Just throwing that out there. But Northwestern plays teams close. They lost to Notre Dame by 10. They lost to Michigan by 3. I know they lost to Akron, but that was all the way back in September. That was a different football team. They lost by 5 back there. I think that Ohio State has a problem. They let lesser teams hang around. And yeah, they blew out Michigan, but
yeah, but this is the Big Ten championship game, playoff on the line. Like, this isn't a regular season ho hum. Let's go on the road and let's walk out with a win and get home. Like, this is everything.
But let me ask you a serious question: what's a bigger game for Ohio State, last week or this week?
I think beating Michigan is more important to the fan base and to the program than it is making the college football playoff. I agree with you there, but it's not like you have to choose. You just beat Michigan. Now it's like, now you're not thinking about Michigan at all. You're only looking at what's ahead of you. You're not thinking, oh, we beat Michigan, now we don't need to do anything. No, you're like, wow, we just stomped the number 4 team in the country. Wait a second, we only have 1 loss. Wait a second, the whole other landscape is looking very shoddy. So why would I look back to Michigan when I can look ahead at a national championship?
I agree. I'm just expecting a little bit of a hangover, enough of a hangover to keep Northwestern within 14 points. That's the only thing I think. I think Ohio State still wins the game, but I think last week you're number 10, Michigan's number 4. You come out, you stomp Michigan at home, in front of your fan base. Everybody's amped. You're high. You're on top of the world right now. And I think that there's going to be a little bit of a letdown at the beginning of this game that's going to keep this game close enough for Northwestern to end up covering in the end. But I do agree with pretty much everything you're saying.
It's possible, man. I just think there's too much on the line here. Like, they got out away from Maryland barely. And then they go in, they stomp the number 4 team. Like, if you're the college football playoff committee, you just had Michigan ranked number 4, and you just saw a team smoke them. Like, it wasn't, they put up 62 points, and Michigan's supposed to have this incredible defense. I know there was like some turnovers and some funky plays, but it was, I mean, it was a beatdown.
Yeah. And it could have been worse.
You're going to say that, oh, well, they lost to Purdue in the regular season. They lost 1 game. Like, that's like, that doesn't work. So, like, if they had barely beaten Michigan, then in Oklahoma, maybe only Oklahoma was undefeated or something. I don't know. I just feel like there's such a path for them to get in. Like, it's right there in front of them. I don't see how they don't get up for this one.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I do agree. So you want to run back through these bets and then get out of here and let everybody enjoy their championship weekend?
Yeah. I hopped on quite a few with you. So
yeah. And then we ended it with against each other.
Yeah. Which ones did I hop on with you? Do you have those?
You hopped on Buffalo minus 3.5 with me.
Right.
You hopped on UAB Middle Tennessee over 45 with me. Then I think that was it. We agreed on a lot of other ones. We agreed on Louisiana Lafayette, Texas. Yeah.
Cool. All right. In addition to those two, I have Washington -5, Louisiana Lafayette +18, Marshall +4.5, Texas +7.5, the over 78 in the Texas-Oklahoma game. I got over 48.5 in the Stanford-Cal game. And then Ohio State -14 in the Big Ten championship.
Yep. I got Washington -5 as well, Buffalo -3.5. NC State -24 in a game. I don't know why it's there. Texas +7.5. The under of 53 in Marshall, Virginia Tech. Louisiana Lafayette +18. UAB Middle Tennessee over 45. UCF -3. Alabama -13. Clemson -26.5. Clemson Pitt over 53. Northwestern +14. Boise and Stanford both -2.5. That's it. That's all I got.
That's it, man. That's good.
Listen to us, enjoy your weekend, and then we'll be back for bowl season.
That's right. What about our law firm?
Oh, you're right. Our law firm. We didn't have a Miami game this week, so we almost forgot about Salah. So we're gonna end our podcast with our law firm. We're gonna end our podcast with Salah, which I love reading the comments on Canes Insight where it's like, do a lot of Canes fans need white collar criminal lawyers? I don't know, but if you do, we have to tell you about our friends at Salah, Astorita, and Cox. a boutique law firm focusing on white-collar criminal defense and security matters. They've been featured and recognized in Florida Super Lawyers as well as Florida Legal Elite, and the partners formerly worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office and the SEC, Sala, Esterreed, and Cox Attorneys at Law. You can visit their website at salalaw.com or call their toll-free number, 1-888-SEC-ATTY. There you go. Well, good call. Look at you. Look at you.
All right. We'll leave you with that. Enjoy the games.